Welcome to Expedition Self on OmTimes Radio with lifelong learner, entrepreneur, and creator of the worlds of Expedition Self, Sam Parrotto. Sam shares 4 decades of studying, guiding, and teaching how to go inside so we can build an incredibly powerful, dynamic, and validating relationship with the self. Expedition Self is laced with stellar, unexpected insights about what it means to be human. Listen now and ignite your self-development process with Sam Parrotto.
Well, hello, I'm Sam Parrotto, and welcome to Expedition Self. We're going to talk about how to get the most out of your self-development program during this hour. And we're also going to talk about how to frame up and empower your relationship with your coach or your therapist or your helper, guide, mentor, or whatever you want to call them. It occurred to me when I was talking to my friend Nick, and actually it was his suggestion that it's one thing to want to grow and, to be open to growing, but it's an entirely different story when it comes to actually navigating it and managing it and making it useful. I mean, we all have different needs of the growth process, but at the end of the day, if we can't figure out how to meet those needs, then we'll just fizzle away from the activity or experience that we're partaking of, and we don't want to just fizzle away, right? We want things to feel like they're intentional and that they produce something that's meaningful for us. So today's show is really designed to help you think about what you are doing to engage in your growth process and how you are setting it up to give you the maximum results. Also, over the last couple of years, we ran an assessment that I'm going to put on my webpage, which is samparrotto.com. And we've had about 1,800 people go there to take it. And it breaks down, it helps you think about what kind of a self-developer you are. Now, I will tell you, a bunch of people didn't finish it because it takes a little while. So if you go, give yourself 10 minutes or so to fill it out. But I think it's worth what it tells you at the end. So, and it fits kind of inside of what we're talking about. So, all right, well, let's see. So we're going to talk about what you do when you have little funds, like you don't have a lot of money to work with. And we're also going to talk about programs or people you've worked with in the past, and maybe you can think about it and it'll shed some light on what caused you to either keep going and get something out of it or to back away. If you listen to me every week, every week I tell everyone this is a call-in show. Yes, it is. And what that means is that I really would like to hear from you. I think our listeners actually really love to hear from other people. It makes it much more interesting than just my voice for the entire hour. So today, you could share an experience that you've had with someone you've hired or employed to help you grow, and how you either got more out of it or how it went. Or you might talk about how you can get more out of an activity you're engaged in now, like, to explore it. But really, this is a show that is designed to help you bring more productivity to your process and maybe some more understanding about what you're actually trying to accomplish and how you can adopt a more robust growth mindset. So the number is 202-570-7057. And I'd love to hear from you at any point in the show. You don't have to wait for the perfect time or anything, right? And also don't listen long enough and wait and then get intimidated and decide not to call it. Because, that happens for me. Sometimes my heart starts beating really fast. And then before I know it, I just say, oh, I'll call in another time. Where do we start? Where do we start today? Because it's actually a pretty large subject. So firstly, let's look at those of you who are wanting to establish a relationship with a therapist or a coach or someone to help you, a guide. Coaching, it comes in lots and shapes and sizes now, right? Some are called spiritual coaches, some are life coaches, some are performance coaches. And I think you're going to want to think about with what is it that you're actually looking for? Which means that you might say, are you trying to fix a problem or accomplish a specific outcome? Or are you actually thinking about growth as this like ongoing process that is all about building a stronger and more open relationship with yourself in some way? One of the things that happened in that survey is that the largest group of people finished in the category that they're really seeking some form of creative expression or expression in life that's more self-actualized and really is a more full and complete one. And so those are the kinds of things you want to think about. Now, if you're looking for that doing level change, that behavioral change, um, it'll often bring you more into relationship with your whole self, but the coach or the helper, they work will be that work will be very different if that's the focus. Now, I have a bias with this because I'm someone who believes you want to build a relationship with the whole self at the being level, and that's the real priority in life because then it creates this wide sweeping far reaching kind of shift in your world and how you see things. And so using a goal or a specific fix to do that is more fulfilling to me than working it from the other way around, where I just go in with the fix and I don't think about that relationship. But here's the thing. If you're looking for that behavioral or performance change, well, then one of the things you want to seek is someone who is not going to reinforce self-hatred and shame and, rough handling of yourself. Sometimes the lashing oneself is part of a performance program. The forcing and driving hard to get somewhere is a central aspect to the way they coach. And to me, that's a lot of what we're trying to work ourselves through in order to get relationship with our whole self is not only to validate or support or lift up the part that's like the big achiever, right? The part that, you know, um, overcomes every other part of ourself that has a need. If you're going to accelerate your development, then reinforcing the part of you that is undeveloped is kind of counterintuitive. And then it bolsters the driven, aggressive, kind of the bullyish side of yourself, the part of you that bullies other parts. And I don't know, if I'm speaking in a way that seems kind of foreign, but I really believe that all of us walk around with one aspect of us that bullies the other side of us. So when looking with this goal-focused idea, find someone who is actually a balance of seeking the goal and caring about your whole self. I would lean away from the person who is just going to give you homework that's designed to be habit changing and what you talk about every week is why you didn't or didn't accomplish that behavior. The other thing you want to find is someone who's actually living their program. Because even if the program they're living has some missing self elements in it, based on where they are, they're true to it. They're having experiences inside of it. They're having to pay attention. And that brings a kind of integrity about it. And because of that, you're going to learn something about yourself because they're being authentic students about their own mission. They're earnest about what they seek. And we always want to look for people that are really invested. The people that are going to help us are the people that are invested in helping themselves. And gosh, I can't say this enough. Don't work with someone who doesn't work with someone else. Someone who is a teacher, but not a student of being taught is just not going to provide the kind of broad experience that will accelerate your program. And if you're teaching and haven't figured out a way to be someone's student, I would encourage you to do that. I just think it just makes everything so much more qualitatively important, right? I am a sponge when it comes to learning about self, and I really always have been, and about being. And but I have to tell you, having someone I speak to who gets me and asks me to show up in a committed way, this is like an accountability thing that I'm working on me. And of course, what it does is it always keeps me from getting too big for my britches. I never get myself in an unconscious place of thinking I'm all that and a bag of chips, or that I'm some big expert about stuff, right? Because I'm always putting myself in a space where I don't know, and I don't know what I don't know, which I do love that saying. So I don't care really who you are. It's easy when you're unchallenged to start to think you know stuff better than the rest, and you leave your growing edge. This applies really to any place you think you're an expert. So you have to stay on that growing edge where you're thrown off, right, for yourself, where you have to be unsure and maybe feel embarrassed or undeveloped. So always ask someone when you're seeking out who you're working with if they work with someone else, and what the nature of that relationship is, and how did they get to where they are, like what kinds of experiences led them to offer this coaching or therapy or whatever. Yeah, so I'm not a nut about people being having lots of degrees or formal training and programs that they participate in, necessarily, because sometimes that in and itself becomes another trap of them thinking they know everything. I'm hoping this makes some sense to you. It'll sound like, oh, I took this 3-year certification program and this is what I follow and it's proven. And that's how I'm going to work with you. You see, if you're wanting the best of someone, you're looking for a person who comes out of a program like that and feels more of a student than an expert, more of a student. And you're wanting someone who is always pushing their own beliefs so that wherever there is oh, this is the way it is. Yeah, this is how it is. They're thinking to themselves, and they're willing to be open with you about the idea that, well, this is how it looks to me now, but I'm questioning that. And I think that it's okay that you question it because it's all just one step along the process that moves us, ahead in our growth game. So this person you want to look for, yes, there's the goal, like whether it be something very tangible or just general growth, but you still want to find a person who has a personal philosophy and about doing personal growth for themselves, and they're open about how they work in it and don't operate like they've arrived. Well, what I also have seen when people try to find someone is that they're not completely conscious of what's driving them to a particular type of person. And so that I'm saying that's me, and I'm suggesting it might be you, right? We don't really know. We're being led in some way or guided to find our way. We open it up and say, hey, here's what I'm wanting. This is what I'm looking for. So as you're going through that meeting of someone, and maybe get very excited about them, and right, what they can teach you and what's going to happen for you, remember that you are responsible for setting that relationship up to meet your needs and to create a learning container for yourself that will support you in the long term. I think lots of people, they just take whatever the person says they're doing or the way that they structure it, and they don't think about, well, what's going to work in my world? What matches up to the way I like to process or the way I work with things, right? How can I create this so I can cause a maximum result? Remember that no matter what relationship you're going into, it's going to be a mirror in some way about you. That the places that are needing illumination, and it's going to show you important information about the way you engage in relationship, period. So when we come back from break, we're going to talk a little bit more about what it means to actually set up a relationship so that you are able to take that kind of responsibility.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OmTimes Radio. IOM FM.
OmTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organisation, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. OmTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OmTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
COVID-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
If you're feeling increasingly lonely right now, you're not alone. It's totally normal. Even though we may not be able to get together in person, connecting virtually with friends and family still gives you a chance to interact with people and may help raise your spirits. Join a virtual book club, set up group text chats, or online video coffee breaks with coworkers.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Okay, I am back. I am Sam Parrotto, and you're listening to Expedition Self. We're talking about how to get the most out of your self-development program. And right now, in particular, before we went to break, we were talking about how you want to set up your relationship with anyone that you hire or you look for to be in that role so that you can be 100% responsible for how that goes. And I think it warrants plenty of talk with that person about what you want and what you're conscious of needing from that person. And also, this is important, that you always go into it with recognizing that there are unconscious and unexpected things that are going to come out of it. That gives you some freedom later when all of a sudden you discover something. To get a bit more practical in my growth work, I like to dive deep in a session. And I have found this is not possible for me in 50 minutes or an hour. So I like to structure my times with teachers in blocks. And I'll go for a bit less frequently. And I have done this since I was 20 because I like to work on the things that are going on in my life under there. Like I want to work to the places where I already reside, not just on the goings on, the daily happenings, right? So I want to find the place where I'm the true foundation, where it's all about me inside that's going on and being human. And so I do have to talk through the stuff on the surface, like everybody would, right? Before I can get there most of the time. But I do need the time to get to the underneath. Otherwise, I just get to the surface and then I'm done and I didn't get to do that deeper work. Now, some people are at the stage in their development where they really need to go and just talk and have someone listen and have someone reflect back what's being said and have someone mirroring it. Like that's all it is. It's just about having that moment of being seen. And I want to say this is a worthy reason to seek someone out. And just to slip this in, I think sometimes we think we want to reach some goal, but what we really want is to find someone who we can talk to, because so many people don't have others around them who can listen and talk and get in their world without having to take space, a certain kind of space for themselves, like opinions and judgments and all that. And so I guess, you might say it's not someone else's job to subvert their self-interest and just be with someone while they talk and talk and talk. And it's a very fine line, and one I have a lot to say about, because I want to be surrounded by people who can be with me for sure. And I'm super vocal about that when it's missing. But by the same token, when it comes to working my process, I recognize that this is not my friend's job, right? It's their choice, and they should have the freedom to come and go and agree or not agree. And that doesn't allow me to really be responsible and say, hey, this is how I want it to go. I think the other thing about working with a coach or a therapist is you want to notice what you do with their opinions and how you empower them. This is important because in the end, you are the one who's responsible with the information or the way that you're relating to what comes from them. I've talked a lot about this being responsible. This is where I probably veer off to the left from the mainstream a little bit. I look at everything through the lens that you are 100% responsible for what goes on for you. Not to blame, but it's in your purview, your power, your conscious and your unconscious choices, what you know and what you don't know, 100% of the time, right? Even when you don't know, or even when you can't make a certain choice. So when you work with someone and you say, help me, what it doesn't mean is that they're supposed to save you or carry your life on their shoulders. You're opening to the experience, and then you're wanting to actually share what that's like for you so that you have your own voice inside of that relationship. So this week, I was in a coaching session with a gentleman who was upset about how his career is being handled by his superior. And in it, we were talking about how he's responsible for the way he communicates, his needs, and the idea that the boss will respond because of that. And I talked about who he was being in his 100%. He did not like this. He didn't like it at all. What was important about that was that he was very clear to me, vocally, right? Articulated, I do not like this. I do not agree with you. And what it did is it allowed me then to really hear him and understand where he was in his experience, right? He wasn't going to, again, operate silently and let me just keep going, right? And then that allowed me to understand where he was. This is what a lot of people won't do in their relationships with their coaches, their therapists, and their helpers. They don't stay really honest and fully open about verbal, right? About how the communication is going. They don't talk about the reactions. They don't get straight about what works for them and what doesn't. And of course, then the therapist, coach, or helper, depending on how developed or accidentally lucky they are that they stumble upon something that's kind of hidden, they won't realize that something is going off. Let's face it, we want to like the people we work with, and we tend to avoid telling them the not nice stuff. Now, this is really significant if we're going to manage a relationship to produce these maximum results. There's also a byproduct, a positive byproduct of this, because by practicing with that kind of transparency and self-responsibility in this relationship, where we're learning and opening up, with the coach and therapist or helper, where we're, how do I say this? They're wanting it to be a safe space, and so are we, right? They're providing that. So we're able to then notice what happens for us and what comes up. Trust that makes you go along with anything when you work with someone just isn't the point, right? We're not talking about that kind of trust. We're saying, no, show up. It disempowers both you and them when you just say, I'm just going to trust. No, because what you're trying to trust actually is your commitment to being that open. After saying all of that, I'm wondering if it's coming through that working with someone in this capacity is, like importante, right? It matters that you bring the most consciousness to the experience so that you're looking all of the time at what you're showing up with and what you're expressing, and that your thoughts are on your growth process and what's happening as it's happening. The relationship itself, how you are together, and how you practice being in that relationship, I'm going to stop right here, is as important as what you thought your goal was or what you came together to work on. And it's also important to highlight that you can't hold the helper, coach, therapist responsible, like for how it goes, right? How much progress you make, or whether you feel satisfied with it, like they're wrong. Because the key is to keep bringing what you're wanting, keep speaking what's happening with you until it becomes clear that this is going to work for you, or this is not going to work for you. Like you get to play it out, right? By the fact that you show up. Okay, so I'm just going to give you some things you might think about. And you might even think about this in terms of like any relationship, any situation that you live in, because I think it actually has some overlap. So let's say that the last 4 sessions didn't yield what you thought you wanted. So you would show up and say this, and then you would be in your mind looking through a set of different perspectives, and they sound something like this. Well, what did I imagine might happen? And given what did happen or didn't happen, how can I see value in it to my growth? And is the thing that I'm wanting not actually really what I was needing? Like, is there something for me to see that's a blind spot about what I thought my intention was all about? How did resistance or self-protection interfere with what I thought I wanted and what I thought I was bringing? I think this is like the 5th question or something. Why is it perfect that I'm showing up today and feeling like we didn't get far enough? Like, why would that be perfect in my life? What is there for me to understand about myself or the way I think? And is this a pattern in my life about how I relate to things? That I'm unsatisfied, or I feel like I don't always get far enough, or I didn't get enough, or I didn't whatever, right? And then the other thing is, I always like to bring things back, right? The past and the present, they interchange a lot. What might be feeling unsatisfied in my life right now? Or might have felt unsatisfied from my past? There's a lot of questions, a lot of pieces about that. And when I give these lists, I kind of imagine that if there's a list that you want something from, that you'll go back and listen to this again, because it's hard, to capture all those questions. But I think they're really useful questions to showing up inside of I'm 100% responsible for how it goes for me. And I want to make sure that everything that happens when I'm working with someone, I utilize to understand myself better. There's so much room to explore when you make this relationship important. Okay, everybody, let's take a breath, right? Okay, stretch, breath, here we are. So now I want to talk about where you are in your journey and how different modalities move you forward. Talking modalities are limited by the nature of you're not moving. So you're in your body and it's in one position, and you're a whole human being. So if you're simply sitting in a room and talking, and maybe not even allotting or creating enough time to talk into deeper levels of yourself, then it's going to be limited in terms of how much it can touch you. Now, you can combine this with other body work type activities, though, and it'll yield bigger results, like energy work or Traeger work or body-centered therapy or acupuncture, or one of my favorites, ecstatic dance, or stretching at the gym. Any body work happening concurrently to you being and talking and opening up and wanting to grow and go on your journey. That minute you engage the body and you do it with some consciousness, some intention, right? The minute you do that, you stimulate the other aspects of the self so that the conscious part, it doesn't take over, or stay in that dominant position. Well, in the talking environment or the sitting in a room, you can also find people who do EMDR or tapping or creative visualization or hypnosis or psychodrama or internal family systems work. Now, these are going to engage the sensory aspects of the psyche, the more creative parts. Oh, you can include art therapy in this, right? These are going to up the ante on the time spent because you're tapping into more of the whole self, more of what is actually running your life rather than just the part of your mind, right, that's sitting there in that conversation. Remember, we're habitual beings. And as habitual beings, we pull information out of the library that we've already thought about or we've already come up with. So if we're trying to get new information about ourselves, well, then we want to bring more to the moment to help that happen. So, well, let's assume that you're really going for it and you found someone that you work with through talking, and this person also offers some other subconscious touching modalities, or you do these on the side, and you're also, now I'm going to add another thing, you're tapping in to your own creative, bring it from the belly kind of expression, like writing or drawing, painting, or scrapbooking, getting the inside out into the outside. I love all this journaling now that's got collaging, and you put words there and you put paint on the page and you glue stuff. Meditating is probably here too. And we could add dream interpretation, like you wake up in the morning and you write your dreams down. Yeah, that is a whole program, right? There's a lot going on there. And when I first started my process, I was young and I didn't know how to process from my first 2 decades. So I cried all the time. And it went on for a couple of years, 5 years. It wouldn't be all at once, but other times I would just cry for hours, mourning and grieving and being sad and letting feelings through. I was just working feelings in the beginning. And I didn't have all these outlets set up, but I was stirring up a ton, really as much, if not more, than I could handle, right? And I didn't do as much in the bodywork department. I hadn't really put in place the creative work. I wasn't, writing and drawing on the whole. In truth, I was pretty full on between managing my life that had all kinds of things going on in it that were hard to work with, because they were drama and I hadn't figured it out yet, and working on myself for about 5 hours a week, and then of course letting the tears come through. That was about all I could handle. Because I didn't have any system. I didn't have any system to support what I was actually going through. Years later, I do understand that I didn't have enough support for the process I was going through, that I needed that body work in whatever form it could have taken. So here we are talking about how do you get the most out of your process, but I'm also saying you can get too much out of your process if you don't have the support system to go with it. And I think, my ego was very much at run at that time. Like, I can handle anything. It's no big deal. I can do it. But when I really look at what would have supported me and been provided more balance and allowed me to take my time adding those extra things that were supportive, the creative process, that kind of thing, I think, and the body work, I think it would have actually made a big difference. Okay, I think we're going to go to break, because before I go to the next section, I want to just break here and we will come back and talk more about this growth process.
The best of holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OmTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose: to link you with your soulmate We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OmTimes Radio.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Okay, we're back. I'm Sam Parrotto, and we're talking about how to set up and work with the people in your life that help you grow, how to make a growth process that's really, really empowering and moves for you. And before we went to break, I was talking a little bit about what was happening when I started my growth process. And I wanted to just go that next step, which is that I think when people are trying to set up their own self-development process, it is actually overwhelming. Just anything, 1 hour a week, right? And then to think about, where do you start and what is enough? You can't forget that you always have to build in solid space for your psyche to bake and rest and process. And as I look back now, if I had had yoga as part of my work, if I would have been able to engage in the art journaling, or if I'd had a circle of friends at the time, family that I could talk with about what I was actually working on, that first decade of my growth would have gone much easier. And the other thing that I really didn't understand was the magnitude of it. I did not understand what the growth process actually was in general. And that took a long time for me to get my arms around. And the books that were out at the time, most of them, they weren't practical enough to help me understand how my subconscious was going to they didn't tell me, your subconscious is going to keep stirring up your emotions. They would talk about the subconscious, but I didn't know how to put that together. I also didn't understand how I was going to have to retrain my responses to myself. I was going to have to understand, that's judgment. That's what I'm doing. I'm beating myself up. And I didn't get that all of these emotions, that there were many of them, not 3, and that they were going to need a lot more attention so I could understand how they occur and how they present, right, in my body experience. So this is why, if you're serious about engaging in your own self-development process and finding someone to work with, that you recognize the pace at which you work can't be rushed by your need to accomplish things. Your whole self really has to be engaged. And believing that you can do it in part and then leave your whole self behind, it's going to have to play catch up at some point. And it's likely that your whole self hasn't fully been engaged with by you, right? Prior to this. So you're learning how to do that as you go. Think of it this way. Imagine that you're driving a car, and with every mile that you drive, some part of that car has to be removed from the engine and cleaned and examined and understood, and then reaffixed to the car in order for you to go to the next mile. Well, because it's our psyche and all of that, we actually can think we're to keep driving. So let's imagine we drive for 5 miles. And now the car is spluttering or sputtering and breaking down, and it needs a break because it's exhausted. And you don't even at that point know which part needed attention, because now there's more than one part that's looking for repairs. Your growth process, really, the more you can do it at pace and include parts of yourself, right? You're managing your pace of your own growth and development. And you don't want to get caught in this push and pull, because that in and of itself takes a toll. And if you go back to what I started in the show, that's why I want you, if you're performance driven, or you're looking for a performance coach to run that marathon, or to accomplish something in the next 6 months, you want to find somebody that understands this, so that you don't create your own unconscious drag on the very process you're trying to engage in. See, pushing yourself to move forward and then getting exhausted or overwhelmed and then backing away from your growing edge and student mind because it all got to be too much, well, then that causes the cycle to start all over again. Your growth process, it's yours. And being committed to growing means that you're cultivating a growth mindset in which all of these things that I'm talking about fit inside of. So you can see that when you choose someone to work with, you're bringing a commitment, you're bringing an intention, you're bringing an understanding of, oh, I'm going to set this up so that I have the room to bring my whole self to it and engage in that relationship. Your growth mindset should be the container for all of it, versus you chasing someone who claims to be an expert or getting immersed in one modality and following it as the be-all end-all. Think of it as you are the holder and source and guide for what you're seeking. You are that, right? You bring yourself to that experience. So now I want to talk about desperation, inadequacy, and survival issues. A very complex and loaded thing. It's likely that these aspects of self exist somewhere in your self-development activities. I'm not saying you don't get joy from signing up for the art workshop or by attending an Omega week, or that you don't love getting that message, or excuse me, I was thinking Thai massage, right? But what I am saying is that there's usually some piece of our self-development process that's tied to fixing something we don't like, filling a hole, and compensating for a place that's missing something. And maybe also needing a change because something's not working, or that something we hold dear is at risk if we don't deal with it. I would encourage you to get very clear about this, as clear as you can get. Because it's not an overpowering thing if you can recognize it. It's when it keeps working behind the scenes, scaring you, triggering you, without you acknowledging what's really at work, that it then dogs you to move faster or try to consume more or feel more intense about the stuff you're doing. And that is counterproductive. Now, again, it's all perfect, so it's part of the process and you get to see it as you go through it. But if we're going to talk about how to set yourself up, this would be something I'd go look at. I like to look at any area in my life where I'm really hard on myself, or I'm driving myself with a lot of assertiveness or kind of dominance, right? Or I'm scared and vulnerable about the outcome of something, and get very real. And then that's the thing I want to take to the people that I work with, right? That help me grow. I want to share that with them, right? Let them know, hey, this is going on for me. And I know it sounds kind of trite, but I have to get to a place where I believe I'm going to be okay, right? That's the only way to stop letting it run the show. And this activity or this growth thing or this teacher, they're not the be-all, the end-all. They're not going to save me or make things right. See, I have to go in understanding that by showing up and doing my work, I'm actually creating a place where that survival stuff goes away. And I don't think this is easy. Most of us don't realize we're feeling desperate or inadequate unless it has to do with money and paying the bills or our health. Maybe we get there when we realize we've been drinking too much and friends start giving excuses about why they don't want to come over, or all of a sudden we get laid off and didn't see it coming. But the desperation, the inadequacy, and the not enoughness, it's usually at play long before those events happen, long before. So by recognizing it, that it may be producing some paralysis or some overactivity, we can get a boost in our self-development process. I guess to sum it up, when this kind of survival stuff is in the background, it produces either a paralysis or overperformance. And while it's normal to have fear that take this form, if we don't call it out, it will affect the payoff from our self-development program. So let's come back. The more you engage the entire system in some form of self-development, the more you will grow. I almost said growl there. That's kind of funny because it's kind of true, right? The more you will have a deeper growl or a richer growl. Anyway, right? So that means you're collecting and intentionally rousing self-information from all aspects of you. And you're consciously paying attention to each. And you're doing it, right, by noticing the desperation and noticing this idea that you want that whole self. You're doing it at a pace that isn't rushed as much and gives yourself time to process. So the emotional self, the physical self, the being self, the spiritual self, the intellect, which includes the conscious and the subconscious, they're all showing up and serving new stuff up for you. And if you're doing this consciously, then you know you have to work with the elements and the ingredients that are being served up so that they weave together like macrame. Like they take their place in your new understanding of yourself, right? Think about it, that all of these aspects of self are getting to see the light of day, getting to be seen by you. And now they're going to bring about additional feeling, additional self-sensory feeling in the body. They'll trigger dreams and flashbacks and parallel moments between the past and now. And so it all means, or it means that you're getting better at working with this and twining it together so it keeps making sense about where you are headed. And this is one of the most important parts of the entire process, and probably one of the reasons I think you need another person to help you weave it all together. A coach, a therapist, a mentor, someone who will keep walking along the journey with you and paying attention and registering what's happening and watch the new information making its way to you and then re-looking at it over and over. This role, when it's filled by someone you have empowered, will help you to stay out of recycling the same information in the same way. And it's one of the most important ways to accelerate your growth process. Finding someone who is gifted and capable of doing this. It's a bit of a feat, but I hope by describing it here, it puts you in a position to describe it to the person in your life too. Right? Hey, this is what I'm wanting. I'm wanting you to be able, right, to keep an overview, to bring me to that. One of the most important roles that this person is holding is that they're holding the whole of you and your life in a very objective, non-reactive, and celebratory way. They believe in your journey. So no matter what you go to someone for, you know the reason or the goal that you set, this quality of taking in the whole and encouraging an amalgamation of all of your experiences and activities in a non-compartmentalized way, it's everything. It kind of like holds the vision for you. And this is really important when you lose focus or you lose perspective or you lose hope. Because let's face it, life's happening. You're doing all this work. It can happen. I have moments when I felt completely forsaken by the process. And whatever I thought the reward was going to be for working on myself, it didn't come through. It actually happened. Today happens to be my son's birthday, and I have one child, and it happened with him. I had worked and worked to conceive for a couple of years, and I'd done all kinds of growth work on it. I had opened up every part of myself that I thought was resisting. I then took on creatively the idea of being fertile, and I get to this July date, and I'm like, oh, I can't believe it's never going to work. I can't believe I've been so forsaken. And a week later I conceived, because what happened in that moment is that all of my desperation that had been hiding in the background, that I was folding into my growth work and my intention and my generating, right, my mindset, it came through. And having someone there who could hold that space and not act as an expert, right, someone who's doing their own work, it gave me room to really work my inner self. And it was the greatest gift. I came in contact with helpless and powerless parts of me in a very real-time way, but also in a very ancient way, with these two aspects met so that I could witness them and feel them all at the same time. And right, that powerlessness is such a part of our lives. And because of it, I ended up accepting my humanness. I got to see that we don't get to say how it goes always, and that we only get to say how we show up. And I conceived a week later. Now, that doesn't always happen, but it's one of those good stories, the ones that, when you get what you want, which I know life doesn't always give us. So I want to try to get this last piece in, that for those who are on limited funds, I want to suggest that you can cultivate a group of friends who want to get really good at being in the process with each other. You can also choose a book and discuss this book and what it means in your life with them. And you'll want to make sure you set up some safety ground rules to make that happen. There's also online programs that allow you to get scholarships or pay what you can. And they're remarkable programs. And YouTube, baby. Oh my gosh. There's so much that's free on YouTube. It's mind-blowing. There's a video on how to journal, how to meditate, how to dance your way through, how to have a growth mindset. An hour a day of YouTube focus on growth stuff will definitely engage you. And journaling, I can't say enough about this. Combine it with a video series, do an online writing challenge, follow writing coaches around because they're throwing out tidbits all the time. Journal when you watch TV, when you go on vacation, write your heart out. Get involved in a practice that helps you get mindful, whether it's Buddhism or yoga or creative visualization or dream work. Like I did this drumming thing that was amazing, breath work. Anything that helps you slow down, be with yourself, and listen and listen and listen. And there's some more progressive things you can do, like engage a family member or a parent. Ask them to agree to talk about every aspect of their life with you, and that they would share and you talk about it, and you set a regular time. See, when you're on limited funds, I think what also follows is this sense that you have to be working to change that all the time, or there's fear behind it, right? And this produces kind of a distracted space. Maybe you feel a little paralyzed. So I want to suggest this is where you then work on something that is all about feeling limited in some way. And I think this can happen if you're dealing with health limitations too. It's any place in your life where you might be feeling like you don't have the freedom or the resources to truly engage in growth process. So this is what you want to create for yourself. A way of journaling about not having enough, talking about what it feels like to be constrained, really giving a voice to that not enough space. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that we have to find a way to work with what we've got. That having a growth mindset is not just for the privileged. Because I am a person, I have a brain, I have a body, no matter how it works. I have a heart, I have breath, I have something that I can work with to create more of what I want in my life. And I'm here to learn, and I always don't know what it is. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I hope this helps you create a self-development process you're excited about and works for you.